This is chapter 8C, gradient of a straight line graph. In this chapter, you'll first understand what a gradient is, how to find a gradient from a straight line graph, and also how to find the gradient from an equation without actually graphing anything. So first of all, we need to talk about what is a gradient. A gradient is basically the steepness of the line, the value. So positive gradients cause lines to go upwards in this direction. Negative gradients force lines to go downwards. So if we look at this example, the gradient of line PQ, which is the pink line, is 2. And so gradients are represented by a number. And the higher the number, the steeper the line. So a gradient of 2 will be steeper than a line with a gradient of 1. Or a line with a gradient of 10 will be steeper than a line with a gradient of 2. Now when we talk, and these will go upwards, negative lines tend to be negative. Lines that drop tend to be negative. So negative 2 is a negative gradient. This line will go downwards. And if we're talking about steepness, negative 10 will create a steeper negative line than negative 2. If we're talking about fractions, negative 1/2 versus negative 2, negative 2 is greater, so this line will be steeper. So again, the greater the value in the positive or in the negative, the steeper the line. And so first we need to be able to look at a graph and find the gradient from what we see. So let's look at a few examples, A and B. And to find your gradient, you have to measure how high it goes up and then how far it goes sideways. So think of y over x, or think of it as rise over how much you have to run. So if we look at line A, starting from a coordinate that I can see on the line, so this one is a pretty solid coordinate. If I start somewhere in the middle, I won't know where it's going. I have to go up 1, 2, 3. So I rose 3, then I ran 1. So my gradient for line A is 3. My gradient for line B, starting from a concrete point, would be 1, 2 up, 1 over, which makes a gradient of 2. Now for lines like F, I start from a concrete point, and again, I have to decide how much I have to rise and run. In this case, I can't rise because the line is going down, so I fall 1 to 2. Sorry, 1 down, and if I go 1 down, it's negative, and 1 over. So my gradient for line F is negative 1. Because you're really looking for where you see the lines cross and intersect so that you can find a solid coordinate. If you start in any random point, such as this point right here where I'm circling right now, the red dot, it doesn't make sense. I need to be on a concrete line so I know exactly how many steps I'm taking up or down and then to the right. So at this time, try to find C, D, E, and G. Pause. So for C, starting at this point right here, I'm going to rise 1, run 1. So C is 1 over 1, which just makes a gradient of 1. D, I start at a very solid point, and I'm going to have to, and I want to get to the next solid point. That's how I know how far I'm falling. So I'm going to drop 2, run 1. Drop 2, so it's negative 2, run 1. So my gradient for D is negative 2. For E, I'm going to go from here, and I have to go to that other point right there, because otherwise it's not clear. I could end right here where the purple triangle ends, but I'm not sure if that's 1/2 or if that's 2/5. It's really unclear. So I'm going to go from one solid point to another. I rise 1, and I run 2. So for E, I rise 1, and I run 2. So my gradient is 1/2. Which makes sense because the line is flatter than the others. And then for G, I don't rise at all, but I do run. So for G, in that case, we know that it's going to just be, G will be y equals, actually, hold on. In this case, it doesn't really do anything. In this case, G has a zero gradient because it's not rising, it's just running. And remember, if G was a line on any graph, this would be a y equals, for example, 2 or y equals 3 kind of line. There's no gradient, it's just y equals something because the line runs horizontal. Now the last skill is gradient from an equation. Find the gradient of these straight lines. Do not draw any graphs. It's really easy. All you have to do is look for the value that's next to x, and that is your gradient. Because the number next to x basically influences the steepness. So if we look at example A, 9 is the gradient. So the answer for A, the gradient is 9. At this time, pause, and can you do B, C, D? So for B, the gradient right next to the x is 2/5. In C, the gradient is next to the x, it is a -3. So you have to consider the sign in front, and that means this gradient will take the line down. This 2/5 will take the line a little flat. This 9 will take the line steeper. And then in D, the line is 10, a positive 10, and that line will be steeper than the first one. And that's it.